What's the worst date you've ever been on? Sat for 15 minutes to hear him talk about himself, work and his future plans, and then as he asked me, "What about you?" his hand went to reach his phone and he starts scrolling. I can't stress this enough. His hand reaches his phone at the same time those words left his mouth. It felt to me like he already decided whatever I am going to say was going to be boring, so might as well multitask as I talk. Went on a date with a chick that took my phone and put a picture of her on my Snapchat. I got 20 messages almost instantly from chicks that knew her and told me to stay away. She was 2 months pregnant, didn't tell me till my friends did. That was a wild date for sure. She was very upset. I thought I would be a little more adventurous and suggest that we go skiing for a first date. At the time, I lived in the south where the closest ski mountain was 2.5 hours away, and it was opening day. It became clear that we probably didn't click on the drive up, but I figured we'd still have a fun day of skiing. On the first run, maybe 100 yards in, she falls hard and tears her ACL, IC, and MEL. It was a very long and awkward car ride back, and I ended up staying with her for several days after to help care for her since she lived alone and was new to the area. She was a very nice woman, but that was just a lot for a first date. I wouldn't say it was the worst, but it was the most interesting. Met a lady on a dating app. A beautiful woman who claimed to be 38, which is my age. I suspected through the pictures she might be in her early 40s. Her profile said she had 3 kids. We talked and she seemed cool. We then met for dinner a week into talking. I could tell she was older, but looked younger than she should because of Botox. Within 15 minutes, she said she had to tell me the truth, because she really likes me. She does not have 3 kids, but 6. She is not 38, but 48. I didn't even know it was a date. Girl I worked with was talking up a breakfast place in a nearby town, and I was like, that sounds great, let's go this weekend. We went, I had a great time, the pancakes were amazing, and I had fun hanging out with a work friend outside of work. I thought she had a good time too. She was laughing and fully engaged with the conversation just like normal. Like 3 weeks later, I was talking to another co-worker when it all came out that she'd been telling people we went on a terrible date, how I didn't even make a move or flirt or do anything that guys she goes on dates with normally do, and how I even talked about a date with another girl at one point. I was flabbergasted. My fat ass genuinely thought we were just a couple of friends getting pancakes. Years ago, before I met my wife, I went on a date with a gal from POF. As we chatted, we discovered I knew her mom from a retail job I had. Her mom was a great lady. From working with her, I knew her daughter was my age, and I would constantly tease her I was going to marry her daughter because of how awesome she was. So upon the revelation of who she was, we arranged to meet at a bar and told her how I knew her mother. We had a few good chats before the date. Then the night of the date, I arrived 20 minutes before scheduled and find she is already there with 2 male friends who were obviously in love with her, and she was beyond tipsy already. So the whole night it was the 4 of us. She was sloppy drunk and slurring her words and was just not a great time. At the end of the night she asked me to drive her home, as her 2 buddies decided to bail. I assist her to my car when she says, "Wait, I gotta pee." She drops straw and urinates on the side of my Jeep. We then leave and her house was less than 5 minutes away. She asked if I wanted to come in, to which I declined and explained I had to go to the car wash. Never saw her again. Hope her ma is doing good though. Met a girl on a dating site. Chatted for a week or so and got along well. She invited me to her place for a date. When I get there, there's a U-Haul truck outside halfway loading up. Turns out this girl is in the middle of packing up her stuff to move to another state and wanted me to help with the heavy lifting. She hadn't mentioned any of this in our chats. Once I confirmed it was really her moving and not a friend or roommate, I told her good luck with that and got the hell out of there. I met a cute girl at a concert. Chatted and had a good time. Got her number. I picked her up a week later. When she got in my car, she smelled so bad I had to roll down the windows. She must have had a bunch of animals in the house peeing on her clothes. It was gross. She tried to kiss me and I had to note that. First Tinder date with someone I had matched with. The date itself was fine, we just got coffee. Things went downhill when I got a call from my sister saying that my dog had just died. I left the date obviously, and the person was convinced that I thought they were ugly and just made up an excuse to leave. Oh, how I wish that was the case. Back in the days of MySpace, I met this chick, and we set up a date. She wanted me to pick her up, so one did. She didn't look anything like her pictures. She said they were from when she was a teenager. One was mid-20s. She was early 20s. Over the course of our date learned that she was in recovery for heroin. The state kept taking her kids from her. Her neighbors complained that she had sex too loudly. At one point she asked if we were gonna fuck, because if we weren't, she needed to make a phone call. When I dropped her off, she started crying about how if she has a normal boyfriend it will help her with her recovery. It was awkward. I never spoke to her again. Not so much my date, but a buddy of mine, when I was in college, met this girl, and asked me if I'd be a wingman and entertain her friend on a double date, while he tried to score with the girl he met. We all meet up and this girl I'm supposed to entertain is so unkempt, looks like she just rolled out of bed still in her PJs and stunk like swamp ass. I thought about fuck this, but I'm there to help a buddy. She proceeds to make fun of the course I'm taking. I was in trade school for welder fabrication. Talk about how she got laid 3 times last week, and how she doesn't like natives. I'm native, but don't look it. Needless to say, I got up and said, sorry dude, I can't do this, and left. My buddy and his date had an argument with her saying how disrespectful I was by leaving. My buddy got up after that and we never saw them again. Had a guy pick me up for our first dinner date, and tell me we were going to a steakhouse for dinner. At that time, I was a committed vegetarian. I thought I had told him that, but I played it off like it was definitely my mistake. Oops. I guess I hadn't told you yet I was veggie. Could we go to another place? I add that it doesn't need to be fancy, and that there's a diner nearby with mac and cheese I love. He says no, that he knows the side salads at the steakhouse don't have meat and I can eat that. I then ask to go home. He looks astonished and tries to argue with me about it. I get out of the car at the next stoplight and head home on my own. I had met A briefly in choir the semester before, and thought she was beautiful, so when we matched on Tinder I was ecstatic. We went out for coffee and she wouldn't let me get a word in, and talked the whole time about how she and her sorority sisters get blackout drunk 5/7 nights of the week, and all the guys she's had sex with in her first semester of college. One was young, heartbroken, and desperate, so we hooked up once and it was stellar. But the next week she called or texted me over 30 times in a row with no response while I was in class, and no booty is that good. A while later I got with my now fiancé. Turns out they knew each other from high school. A started spreading rumors that I had cheated on her with fiancé and that fiancé had stolen her boyfriend. And when that didn't work, she started claiming that I was still sleeping with her. We still reminisce about her antics sometimes. First and only date I ever went on. Girl was on her phone the entire time. I knew this was poor etiquette, but I was still trying to make the most out of it because I had no experience before. Nothing really notable happened, just generic date conversations. The weird part was she was on her phone the entire time, was because she was making plans after the date in which I had to drop her off at a club where her friends were at. I didn't bother to ask if I could join them since she just wanted to be dropped off, and I didn't want to be too pushy. Never heard from her again after that. So yeah, that was the best, the worst, and the only date I have ever been on. I was in vacation and met this guy. He told me he invites me to sit in his garden, and that we can chill there. He came to pick me up from my hotel, and we started to drive very far away. I started to be a bit concerned. He then brought me to this weird place where a man was waiting in front of a building. He paid him money and brought me to a very disgusting apartment and locked the door. I was like, what is going on? We were supposed to hang out outside. I just left. Creepy AF. Mid-30s woman kept talking about her parents and living with them and their goofy antics. I was mid-20s. First time meeting, had only chatted a little by text. Every time I got flirty she would half reciprocate, half repeat this line about snacks after dinner, which sounded like innuendo. Given the age gap, I'd assumed she just wanted a nice night out, and a hookup. She'd said it had been a while since she'd dated. IDFK. Conversation was just polite mostly. This unattended child in the restaurant was literally around on our table at one point. Meeting up initially was confusing. She couldn't find the front of the restaurant, and I didn't recognize her because her photos were all at least 5 years out of date. Then she, mocked me for trying to do a quick goodnight kiss. Said her snacks after dinner, thing again, when we'd just had literal dinner, and walked around a bit downtown, and it was just weird. Clearly just on very different wavelengths. Picked a girl up and we went to a tapas place. All the way there she was on her phone. When I parked, she threw the door open and damaged the paint slightly. We went into the restaurant and both ordered. I noticed I was doing all the talking, so I asked her about it. She said, "I don't have anything to talk to you about now, I just wanted to get it over with." But I was hungry and we had ordered, so the food came. She moaned about her meal and sent it back twice. Then got her food and ate it. My food was lovely. I carried on doing all the talking to avoid silence and finished my meal. I asked her if she wanted dessert. She said no. When the waiter came, I asked for the bill, ready to make my escape. Then she stopped him and complained she wanted dessert. We ordered dessert. When she finished dessert, she started talking a little. I paid the bill and we got into my car. Before I could start the engine, she said, "You were quite nice. We will go back to yours and I will let you have sex with me tonight." My response: "No, you're okay, I will drop you back to the bus stop where I picked you up from." Never heard from her again, thankfully. Took a girl out to a date to a museum in town. Anytime I attempted to engage in conversation, she would shush me. Resign myself to the fact that she wants to appreciate the art in silence. After a while we reach a hallway where there's not art, and it's more like a set of benches and water fountains and bathrooms to rest at before continuing into the next exhibit. Once again attempt to engage in conversation. And once again, get shut down with short one-word responses. When we made it out the museum, I gave my cordial goodbye, as she was clearly not interested in me. And out of nowhere she blows up that I'm not even taking her out to lunch. We had texted previously that if we hit it off at the museum, we could maybe hit a noodle spot 2 blocks away from the museum, but that very clearly hadn't happened. Complaining about not getting her lunch paid for was more words than she had spoken to me for the previous 2 hours. I had paid for our entrance fees and didn't feel like I was on the hook to also buy a meal for a girl who seemed annoyed to be next to me in public, so I let her be mad and took my leave. Years ago, a blind date set up from a friend. He picked me up, wearing a sweater that Bill Cosby would have worn on the Cosby Show, LOL. 2K me out for sushi. I hate sushi. Then we met up with our friend that set us up to go see her boyfriend, who was in a band at a bar. He spent the whole night ignoring me at the bar except whenever guys came over to talk to me, and he'd suddenly appear. I met a guy on Match.com back when it was semi-free. We met up for coffee, then we went to his house to pick something up. I can't remember what, as it was 17 years ago. He had picked me up, so I was kind of at his mercy. Well, on the way to his house, he told me he'd just been released from prison for being an unwitting accessory to murder. We get to his house and I meet his roommate. Whilst said date was in the bathroom, the roommate whispered, "Why are with him? You should stay away from him." He took me back to the coffee shop and needless to say, I never called him again and blocked him. My best friend and I decided to go on a double date. She had been seeing a guy and I had just started talking to a guy I had met online. Her guy ended up bailing on her and mine drove several hours to meet me. We ended up going to a Mexican restaurant. This guy, who to this day I still don't remember his name, my friend and her roommate. I got a little too drunk off of margaritas, because I was not feeling it, and I felt like I needed it to get through the date. After dinner, he took me to a movie, and the only seats left were on the front row. Instead of watching the movie, he stared at me the entire time. It was the most awkward I have ever felt in my life. He took me back to her apartment afterwards and I told him that I really needed to check on my friend because she was so upset about being stood up. He tried to kiss me and I dodged it. I never spoke to him again. I did feel bad that he drove that far to see me, but he reminded me of a turtle, an awkward turtle. Went on a blind date some friends set up. All she did was talk about herself. Never asked anything about me. At some point she gets up and clearly states, if you're gone, when I come back I won't be upset. So, I leave. The next morning I had paper plates taking up literally every part of my yard, and car that read things like please give me another chance, you're the love of my life, etc. She never had my number and obviously followed me home, but that was all there ever was. She never made any contact or any attempts to see me again. Invited this girl to my apartments when I was 16, she was 18 LOL. We took a stroll around the complex and ended up sitting on a stairwell in view of her ancient Honda that came from the factory with only one side mirror. Probably the most interesting thing about the date. Anyway, we get to making out, and not a minute or so into it she straight up burps while lips locked and tongues twisting. I think I might have baby bathed, but didn't want to make a scene. Needless to say, she ended up leaving after a bit, and we never met up again. Our good times. Met a girl via Tinder, and agreed to meet at a restaurant upon multiple requests. By her when I arrived she weighed about 30 kilograms, more than her profile pics, and she was already dining on a family feast and stuffing her face so much so that she could not greet me properly. I was shocked and too polite to say anything. I told her that she didn't really look like her profile pics. She then insisted had a great sense of humor, and I just stared at her blankly. When the bill came she said she had no money, and I was forced to pay the equivalent of about $80 for her food. Left and blocked her immediately. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos like this one.